What's up, everyone? Welcome into DodgerHeads Live, presented by DodgerBlue.com. My name is Jeff Spiegel. I am joined by Daniel Starkand, and not the result any of us were hoping for. Not exactly the most enjoyable, fun game to watch as the Dodgers fall 6-1 to the Padres, the second game of a four-game series. They lose their second straight game, I believe, for the first time this season. We're going to get to a recap of the game. We're going to get to the hitting spiral woes. We're going to get to the bench woes that the Dodgers have. But just immediate reaction to this, Daniel. I mean, obviously, you are not panicked. I am not panicked, but this wasn't a fun one to watch.
Yeah, definitely not panic, but you're right. This was not a fun game. It was the least fun game of the season. I mean, it started off well. They got that run in the first inning. Unfortunately, Rios hit into the double play, and then it was all just downhill from there. I mean, seemingly nothing went the Dodgers' way. They couldn't hit. Kershaw gave up a few bombs. The defense didn't do much to help him out. So it was just all around just poor play. And credit to the Padres. They've played really well, the first two games of the series. They've made some incredible defensive plays, and you got to tip your cap to them at this point. I mean, they straight out came out and beat the Dodgers tonight.
Yeah, and let's not forget, I mean, we are talking about a Padres team that is very good. Most people think the second best team in all of baseball. So while you don't like to lose to them, especially at home, especially 2 days in a row, it's not like we're losing to the Diamondbacks or the Rockies here. That's one thing. On the flip side, it has become a theme. I see some people in the comments. We appreciate you joining us. People are not happy about AJ Pollock. They're not happy about Sheldon Noisy. They're not happy about Edwin Rios. I think lots of people are going to have some Edwin Rios. I don't know. We're gonna have lots of Edwin Rios takes, I'm sure, going on in the comments below. Thomas Crick says we suck. I'm not quite sure I'd go that far. Obviously, some guys on the injured list. People saying, "Hey, we need to get some of these guys healthy." So, absolutely agree with you there. So, again, if you're joining us on Facebook or Twitter or Instagram YouTube or Periscope, we appreciate you joining us. Here's the plan for tonight. We'll start with a summary of the game here in just a moment. Then we're going to talk a little bit about Clayton Kershaw, who performed okay, I would say tonight. The stat line probably a little bit better than maybe the actual performance was. Offensive woes for the Dodgers. We're going to get through what the last 6 games have looked like, which is not great. And then we're going to talk about some bench. Are there solutions to those offensive woes? So let's start with the game summary. You kind of hinted at it. Dodgers take a 1-0 lead in the bottom of the first. This is a game everybody expected to be a pitcher's duel between Kershaw and Darvish. Kershaw gets into trouble in the first after a Justin Turner error, gets out of it. Mookie Betts leads off the game for the Dodgers with a double. Max Muncy RBI single, and boom, you think, okay, we put a couple guys on, a walk. You expect the Dodger offense to be able to pick itself up. Unfortunately, from the moment that Max Muncy had an RBI single, the Dodger offense was 2 for 27 with 11 strikeouts. 2 for 27 with 11 strikeouts. A lot of missed opportunities. We'll get to those. Clayton Kershaw comes back out with a 1-0 lead and just he had some good stuff and made some mistakes. He made 3 mistakes. Will Myers and then Fernando Tatis Jr. twice punished them. I mean, those were not cheap home runs. All 3 of those were absolute bombs. Offensively for the Dodgers, they fall behind 3-1, just couldn't make it out. As I said, Edwin Rios double play in the first with runners on first and second and 1 out. Edwin Rios strikes out in the third with runners on first and third and 2 out. Sheldon Noisy strikes out in the seventh with runners on first and second and 1 out. Mookie Betts lines out in the seventh with first and second and 2 out. That was an unbelievable play by Manny Machado. Betts' liner, expected batting average of 770. Things just kept getting worse. There was defensive ugliness, Turner an error, Seager an error. Corey Knebel leaves with an injury after one batter. Looked like an elbow the way he was holding his arm. The fear with him, of course, is elbow, so maybe I'm reading too much into it. Dennis Santana comes in for Knebel. He's a mess. Can't find the strike zone. Can't throw it straight. He gives up 3 more. The Dodgers end up losing 6-1. So we've kind of hinted at it. Not really pretty in any way, shape, or form. And I think that's what's hard. There wasn't really anything. The defense was bad. The pitching was okay. The hitting was terrible. The situational hitting was terrible. Overall, just a really rough thing. I know we've talked about this a little bit, but just a rough game for the Dodgers tonight.
Yeah. And let me start with Knebel, just because if there's one potentially like important thing that happened this game, it would be that.
Yeah.
Like you said, it looked like it was an elbow issue, which obviously is never ideal, especially for a guy who just had Tommy John surgery 3 years ago, whenever it was. So yeah, hoping for the best with him. But it definitely did not look good. I'll probably, peek over at my phone a couple times during this show to see if we get any sort of update. But yeah, hoping for the best with him. As far as the actual game went, like you said, not much went right. right in that first inning, as soon as they only got one run
Yeah.
there after Rios hits in that double play, I was just thinking to myself, that's a huge missed opportunity. You got a guy like Darvish on the mound who's, one of the best in the game. Like
Yeah.
we've now seen him twice this season, and he's as good as it gets. He has so many different pitches. He changes speeds really well. He had guys, thinking all night, they were guessing this and he'd throw something else. And so he was great. And that was just a huge missed opportunity in the first. They kind of had him on the ropes a little bit. Ideally, you'd like to come out, punch him in the mouth, get a few runs there, but it didn't work out that way. And then after that first inning, it was all Padres. Like you mentioned, Kershaw wasn't horrible by any means, but he'll be the first one to say this wasn't his best night. You mentioned the 3 homers; none of those were cheap homers. All 3 of those, were hit well out of the park. They were all destroyed. So yeah, just an all around bad night. Not sure. Even if I had to pick one positive, I don't know if I can.
Yeah.
If I'm being completely honest.
Well, and let's talk about Kershaw because he's probably as close to a positive as the Dodgers had. You look at the box score: 7 innings pitched, 5 hits, 3 earned runs. As we said, all 3 were solo home runs, 1 walk, 7 strikeouts. I mean, at the end of the day, if this is a bad Clayton Kershaw start, you take it. I mean, 7 innings, 5 hits, 3 earned runs. That's a pretty good line with 7 strikeouts for Kershaw. He continues his strong play, but you look underneath the surface and it wasn't necessarily as pretty. He allowed 8 hard hit balls. Only 19 were put in play. So 42% of the time the ball was put in play, it was a hard hit. For context, compare that to Yu Darvish. Yu Darvish allowed just 3 hard hit balls on 16 in play. So Kershaw almost 3 times as many hard hit balls. The hard hit percentage almost more than double what Yu Darvish's was. Kershaw did get 11 whiffs, 26% whiff rate, which is a really good number. Yu Darvish actually only had a 23% whiff rate. So that was what was interesting. I mean, you're a former pitcher, so maybe you can help me out with this. It felt like Kershaw had really, really good stuff. He just made some mistakes. His slider at times looked unbelievable. I believe it was in the 7th. He was 1 pitch away from an immaculate inning, and he missed with his curveball by about an inch on a pitch that, depending on the umpire, has been getting called a strike. So there were moments of absolute brilliance, but then you look at the Tatis home runs and the Myers home runs, and those were just meatballs waiting to be hit. So what did you see from Kershaw as far as some good and some bad?
Yeah. Yeah, honestly, what I saw from Kershaw is he kind of got better as the outing went along. You mentioned he had 11 swings and misses. I'd be curious to see how many of those were in, his last couple innings. You mentioned he had 1 pitch away from an immaculate inning in the 7th. I feel like he only had like 3 strikeouts in his first like 5 innings or whatever. So I mean, the first few innings, he just kind of wasn't really missing as many bats as we're accustomed to seeing. And like you said, he made the few mistake pitches that, when you make those pitches, you hope, maybe it's a double in the gap or a single or something. Unfortunately, tonight, they got out of the ballpark, all 3 of them. And I will say credit to Kershaw. Up until tonight, he had given up 0 home runs on the season. So those were the first 3 balls to leave the yard against him all year. But yeah, it just wasn't his best. He wasn't bad by any means, and I will say it was good for him for getting through 7 there. He kind of saved the bullpen a little bit. If you look at outside of Knebel getting hurt, the Dodgers high leverage guys, they're all pretty well rested going into the final 2 games of this series, which I think is big.
Yeah.
If you're not going to win, at least let's not use up our big guns in the bullpen. So they were able to get through it with Kershaw and Santana and Jimmy Nelson, who actually, I guess if there's one positive to take away, that's it. Jimmy Nelson, he looked pretty good again tonight. He's had a few good outings in a row now. But yeah, overall for Kershaw, it was not great, not horrible. Good for him to get through 7, but unfortunately, on a night where the offense is as cold as it was tonight, what he did just wasn't good enough.
Yeah, and again, defense didn't help him out. I mean, neither of the 2 errors from Turner or Seager or Edwin Rios dropping a ball, none of those ended up coming back to bite Clayton Kershaw. To your point, he actually had 6 strikeouts in the 5th, 6th, and 7th innings combined. So he had 1 strikeout in the first 4 innings, 6 in his last 3. And Jason Austin, I've got to give him credit on YouTube. He points out Kershaw also had a base hit, so helping himself there. Although he did get doubled off.
8-pitch strikeout as well too.
That's right. Although he did get doubled off. So I mean, you want to give him credit for the hit. The base running wasn't great. He was complaining about the umpire, how quickly it was called. But yeah, I mean, again, Clayton Kershaw. If this is an average Clayton Kershaw start, you take it. I mean, this is like if this is one of the worst ones we've seen in a while, we'll take it. Again, not perfect, but this is a good Padres team. And remember, this is a Padres team he faced a week ago. So
Yeah.
that was one thing. As Rob and I, if you followed the show, we've got sort of a gambling preview of the weekend every week. And as we were talking about that, that was one of the things I was curious is we like the under, which went under in game one. Austin Barnes' streak of 7 consecutive was going to be 7 consecutive. Dennis Santana messes that all up. It went for a
Yeah.
push today. It went for a push, so we're still not losing on the Austin Barnes under. But the one thing I wondered on that sort of in that regard was what that would do to the numbers having seen these guys immediately. The Dodgers clearly were more comfortable against Darvish. The Padres clearly a little bit more comfortable with Kershaw. Do you think that plays a role in this? I mean, do you think having seen him just 6 days ago, basically, does that play massively into the advantage of the hitters?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a huge advantage for the hitters. Anytime, you see a pitcher, you see his stuff, you're gonna fare better the second time or third time, when once what's coming, not necessarily what's coming when, but yeah, when a curveball's coming, you know what it's gonna look like. So yeah, that's definitely a huge advantage to the hitters. With that being said, these guys, Kershaw and Darvish, and again tomorrow, with Snell and Bauer, when those guys are performing at their top level, like it doesn't matter how many times you see it. Like
Yeah.
when Kershaw's executing his pitches out there, you could see it 100 times and you're still not going to hit it. So, but that definitely could have played, some sort of role. But yeah, I think as the game went on, he kind of got a little better. So that was when guys were seeing him
Yeah.
for the third time on the night. So I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we've got a question from Michael Ford. Hold on to the mailbag questions. We'll get to those at the end. Asking about trade candidates. He mentions Chris Bryant. I don't think that one's necessarily realistic because if the Dodgers are going to get help, it's going to be a bench bat, not a guy that
Yeah.
like Bryant, who would be an absolute pencil in starter. They don't have a place for Bryant, as weird as that sounds. Maybe you could find a way to get him in left field or something like that. I don't know. But hold on to that. So let's go to the offense then. Kershaw pitches okay. It's kind of like Buehler last night where maybe not perfect, but the offense does him no favors. This is the type of game that if the Dodger offense just is performing at its normal level, we're not even talking about Kershaw. We're probably
Right.
talking about how amazing he was. But because the
Yeah.
Dodger offense can produce, it puts it. So let's talk about the offensive woes. 6 consecutive games now for the Dodgers that they've been pretty mediocre, if we're putting it bluntly.
Well, worse than mediocre.
Worse than mediocre. I mean, I guess we're spoiled as Dodger fans, so depending on your
I'd
context,
say
but
mediocre right now.
so their first 14 games of the season, the Dodgers were scoring just over 6 runs a game, averaging striking out about 8.5 times a game, and getting about 10 hits a game. Okay, so just keep those numbers in mind: 6 runs, 10 hits, about 8.5 strikeouts a game. Over the last 6 games, they're averaging 4 hits a game, 2 runs a game, and 11 strikeouts a game. So strikeouts are up about 2.5. Hits are down 10 to 4, and runs are down from 6 to 2. Obviously the Padres are a good team, so you've got to keep that in mind. They have faced some good pitching. I wouldn't necessarily call what they saw in Seattle great pitching. Marco Gonzalez has been okay, but Sheffield's been rough, and Gonzalez has been okay the last 4 years. He'd been terrible before the Dodgers faced him.
Yeah.
So there's a lot to see there. Obviously, Bellinger is hurt. Lux is hurt, although Lux was not playing especially great before. Chris Taylor has now missed 2 games in a row. Zach McKinstry has missed 2 games in a row, is now on the injured list. So in some regards, I mean, Bellinger's and Lux have been out for this entire stretch. So in some regards, it's kind of like I don't know what you blame this on. I don't think having Cody Bellinger and Gavin Lux in the lineup is absolutely the immediate fix for this kind of thing. So when you look at those numbers, again, down from 6 runs a game to 2, up from 8.5 strikeouts a game to 11, down from 10 hits a game to 4. What do you make? You and I are not panicked. I want to stress that to everybody watching. We don't think anybody should panic. This is one of the best offenses in baseball. It's going through a rough stretch. It happens. They are missing guys. But what do you make of what you've seen the last 6 games from the Dodger offense?
Yeah, I'm not panicking at all. These are things that happen over the course of a 162 game season with every team,
Yeah.
some more than others, obviously, but it just happens. It's been a lot of unfortunate things all happening at once. You mentioned all the injuries. That's obviously not ideal right now. And on top of that, that usually the Dodgers, their depth is their biggest strength, and they, usually when they have injuries, they could just sub other guys in, and they come in, and the team doesn't skip a beat, and they're able to produce right away, and that just hasn't happened at this point. If you look at, I tweeted like 5 through 8 in the Dodgers lineup, like they weren't even giving competitive at bats tonight. Like they were just watching strikes go by. And on top of that, that puts even more pressure on, 1 through 4, the only main guys that were in the lineup. And those guys at the moment, most of them, not all of them, but most of those guys are slumping too. Seager is, he's, I think, like 1 for his last 25 or something like that. He's looked lost at the plate. Mookie hit a couple balls hard tonight, and unfortunately was just a victim of some great defense. Manny Machado made just an incredible catch. So it's just a lot of unfortunate things all kind of happening at once, and it sucks now, but this is not something that's going to last the whole season. Like it's just a period that they're going to get through. Hopefully, you hope it ends sooner than later. Ideally, we'd like to take the last 2 games of this series and come away with a split, but like you mentioned, they're facing some tough pitching this weekend. Yu Darvish, I've already given him enough praise. I feel like he's as good as it gets. Blake Snell, that's another good arm they're going to see tomorrow, and then Joe Musgrove, who they're going to see Sunday. He's already got a no-hitter to his name this season. I believe he's got like a 1.1 ERA. So things aren't going to get easier. Guys are just going to have to, do what they can to scrape a few runs across. One thing I will say, I liked Luke Raley. When he dropped that bunt down, I like that a lot. You got to find a way to get something going,
Yeah, as you say, so Dodger 5 through 8 hitters, 1 for 13 tonight, and the one was a bunt single into the shift by Luke Raley. I'm a big fan. Look, if you can't hit crap, if you're Rios or Barnes or Noisy or Beatty, any of these guys, like bunt into the shift. I'm not saying bunt. I did joke about Austin Barnes sacrifice bunting with the guy in first. I had my friend Rob texted me. He goes, "You have a pitcher up next," and I said, "Yeah, I was mostly joking." And then afterwards, I said, "Maybe I wasn't joking." I think Clayton Kershaw actually is a better hitter than Austin Barnes, but you kind of hinted. If you want to get to, in my opinion, the root of the offensive woes that the Dodgers have had, it comes in the depth and it comes with the bench. Dodger pinch hitters now 0 for 19 on the season. 5 through 8 hitters. We talked about how bad they were. Here are some of the guys that the Dodgers have been. I'm not going to include Luke Raley in this list because he's actually been decent. Zach McKinstry obviously has been good. But besides those two, you've got Edwin Rios slashing 111 batting average, 256 on base, 194 slug. Austin Barnes, 200 batting average, 314 on base, 233 slug. Sheldon Noisy, 111 batting average, 111 on base, 444 slug. And Matt Beatty, 091 batting average, 231 on base, 091 slug. Those 4 guys have put together 97 at-bats. So the Dodgers are getting 97 at-bats from those guys, in a not a big sample size. We're talking about like 18 games. So basically 4 to 5 at-bats per game from a guy who's some combo of those guys that are hitting around 140 on the season. It's been absolutely disappointing. Obviously, Lux is on the DL, Bellinger's on the DL, McKinstry's on the DL. Chris Taylor out 2 days in a row. But I think the thing that's most worrisome for me is that so often we talk about the Dodgers' depth, and these guys, we're just used to them coming up and performing. Obviously, I think Noisy has put together some competitive at-bats. Raley has not been terrible, and there is some injuries. But the only other 3 hitters on the 40-man roster besides DJ Peters, who we saw called up tonight, Keibert Ruiz, who's the third catcher, Matt Beatty, who I already mentioned, and Zach Rex, who, as far as I know, has never played in a Major League Baseball game. So it does feel like a position the Dodgers just said, hey, we think Beatty, we think Noisy, we think some of these guys are going to perform. They haven't. So I don't think the answer is there. Again, we can talk in a little bit if the Dodgers need to make a move. But of those guys, I mean, Rios looked lost all spring. And I'm not saying we should put a ton of stock into spring, but I tweeted, I said, I don't know if maybe the Justin Turner thing, thinking he was going to be the starting third baseman all the way up until 3 weeks before, and then getting the gut punch of Justin Turner re-signing and knowing that he's falling way down the pecking order immediately. There's no DH. That would have been demoralizing to him. The rest of these guys, I mean, Barnes, this is kind of what I expect from him. Noisy, not expecting much. Beatty, not expecting much. So I just don't know what where the optimism is in that group, I guess.
Yeah. And just real quick, we just got a Corey Knable update. Dave Roberts said he's going to be undergoing more testing tomorrow, but it's an upper tricep issue, which to me, that's not great, but it's better than it could have been. Like your upper triceps kind of back here. So that's closer to your shoulder than your elbow. So hopefully, it's not an elbow issue because a guy who just had Tommy John, that's the last thing you want. Shoulder's not much better, but I guess we'll wait.
Better.
Yeah,
Marginally better.
we're hoping for the best here. We'll find out more tomorrow. But yeah, as far as the hitting goes, everything you said is spot on. Like they have to get some sort of production from some of these guys. Like in a perfect world, you'd be able to option Edwin Rios right now, and he could go to the alternate site or wherever and kind of get things figured out because he's clearly out of whack. But there's not really anyone else
No.
to call up at this point. Like you could bring up Matt Beatty, but he was just as bad. You mentioned, Zach Rex. He hasn't played in the big leagues ever. What's his name? DJ Peters is now up, so he would have been the primary candidate, but he's now here because McKinstry's down. So yeah, they just need to hope that these guys are going to snap out of it. Not many of them have the track record for us to be confident about them snapping out of it. Like I'd say Rios of that bunch, like his success, and even him, like it's been a very short
Oh yeah.
sample. So I mean, you hope for the best, but yeah, at the moment they're just not getting anything from those depth guys. So yeah, you hope Lux will be back. I think he should be back around like Monday or so. And you hope Chris Taylor, who hasn't been on the IL, you hope he could be back in the lineup at some point this weekend. Hopefully, he's dealing with a back injury, so you just hope they start to get some of these guys back because right now, the bench isn't getting it done. And I will say, Dave Roberts is not really helping it either. They had one good bat on the bench tonight, and that's Will Smith. And I'd say there was a prime opportunity right there in what was it, the 7th inning. They went to Sheldon Noisy as a pinch hitter with 2 on and 1 out. In the pitcher's spot. I don't know why you're not using Will Smith right there, who's your only guy on the bench who could actually hit. And even he's slumping a little bit right now, so I'm not saying anything would have changed, but I like that option better than Sheldon Noisy, who's done nothing outside of the home run he hit last night. But yeah, it's just a perfect storm of everything going wrong at the moment.
Yeah, yeah, you know how I feel about Will Smith, but hey, heaven
Yeah,
forbid, our backup catcher
yeah,
comes into the game. Because what if, Daniel? What if the
yeah,
1 in a zillion chances that your backup catcher gets hurt? It's like, my
yeah,
goodness, I'm with you. I mean, like, again, Noisy, I'm not super complaining about. He put together some good at bats. He got a terrible high strike call in that at bat that kind of
yeah.
threw him out of whack. So it's not an Noisy's probably the guy that I mean, Rayleigh, I probably trust the most, and Noisy's probably second, and that's saying something because I don't necessarily trust either of those guys. But yeah, man, Rios, Barnes. I mean, even Pollock. Pollock's been pretty
Pollard,
rough
yeah,
as well. I was looking up some of the numbers of some of the Dodgers' better hitters coming into tonight. Corey Seager was 2 for his last 20. Of course, he goes 0 for 4, so he's now 2 for his last 24. And that's going back to a 1 for 5 game, the 1 for 5 game. So he got the home run in extra innings, but if you go back beyond that, it's 3 for 30 past that, maybe even more depending on, I'm not looking at individual at bats. So that's not good for Seager. On Justin Turner's end, it's 2 for his last 12 coming into this game in the 4 games leading up to tonight. Turner was 0 for 3 tonight. So 2 for his last 15 in the last 5. Max Muncy, I mean, zeros everywhere you look. He's 0 for his last 14 coming into tonight. The 4 games leading into tonight, 1 for 3. Obviously, he had the RBI single. And then Mookie Betts, he was only 2 for his last 11, or I guess 3 for his last 15, 4 for his last 21, 4 for his last 21 coming into tonight's game for Mookie Betts. He was 1 for 3. So those are the 4 guys that are healthy, and none of them are performing. Chris Taylor, like, the average is really poor. The on-base percentage has been okay. So, I mean, it's bizarre when you look at, and obviously we're talking about a 6-game slump, and every single one of these guys is slumping at the exact same time. So that's kind of when you're the Dodgers, you're basically banking on, okay, well, if Turner goes into a slump, surely Seager and Mookie won't, but it's just weird that all of them are going into a slump. So from your perspective, I mean, what needs to change? Like, how do they snap out of it? Is it just keep doing the same exact thing and hope for a different result tomorrow? I mean, it doesn't look like the guys at the top of the lineup, it doesn't look like they're pressing. Edwin Rios looked like a wreck. I mean, like when his at bats, it was like he had no idea it was coming. He strikes out on 3 pitches just looking at him. And then the next at bat, he's like, I'm just going to swing. And the first pitch almost hit him in the back foot. And he's 3/4 of the way around. So Rios is a disaster. But I don't feel that way. I mean, Mookie obviously played well tonight. Could have easily been 2 for 3 with a couple big hits. Muncy gets an RBI single. Corey Seager didn't look good. Justin Turner didn't look good. So how do they snap out of this? I mean, do you just keep doing the same thing these guys have been doing their whole life and hope that they wake up tomorrow and feel different?
Yeah, yeah, I agree with you. Outside of Rios, like it doesn't really look like anyone's pressing too hard, which I guess, is a positive to take away. Because hitting's just as much mental as it is physical.
Yeah.
Like you could get in your own dome at times. You mentioned with Rios how he just looked at three strikes down the middle and then comes up the next at bat clearly with a plan of I'm swinging first pitch,
Yeah.
and that pitch is not close.
Not
So he's
close.
in his head for sure. But yeah, I think you just got to keep at it. Like it's baseball, baseball. It's the hardest sport in the world, in my opinion, and hitting is the hardest
Yeah.
thing to do. So, these things happen. It's a 162 game season. But yeah, you just got to keep at it. These guys work hard. They're in the cages every day. Like it's not like they're not doing everything they can to get out of this. Like it's just not things aren't working out right now. Like I'll point to the Chicago Cubs. They started off this season, their offense was horrible. Like they looked like they couldn't hit, anything. And now all of a sudden they've scored double digit runs in like 4 or 5 straight games.
Yeah.
And they're hitting bombs all over Wrigley Field. I was watching their game earlier today. So, these things happen. There will be one game where kind of everyone snaps out of it and they score, 8 runs or something. And then hopefully they could carry the momentum from there. But yeah, you just got to keep at it. They're not going to be slumping the whole season. The guys you mentioned, like at the top of the lineup, the top 4 guys, those guys are all really good hitters.
Yeah.
Like they're not going to be slumping too long. I know those guys will snap out of it. I'm not as confident about some of the bottom of the lineup and bench type
Yeah.
guys. Like those guys, who knows with them? We'll see. Maybe the Dodgers have to go on the trade market and pick up, a bench type bat. I've kind of always said they kind of needed that just because I wasn't really riding the Matt Beatty train a whole lot. I thought they could use another right-handed bat. So we'll see. I mean, there's a long way between now and the trade deadline. I don't think it's something they're going to address now,
Yeah.
but that's always an option. Like their farm system's plenty good that they could pretty much go get whoever they need to get if they need to.
Yeah, it's an interesting group, right? Because you look at all the guys we mentioned, and obviously, based on the fact, I know Gavin Lux is expected to be back relatively soon. It sounded like he was going to start to take some at bats. Obviously, the fact that McKinstry was placed on the DL and Chris Taylor was not, I would imagine that means they're optimistic that maybe tomorrow he would be back, maybe even Sunday. So but you think about now, you never can assume that a team's going to be fully healthy. But you talk about, okay, if Lux, Bellinger, and McKinstry are all back and Chris Taylor is back, things start to take shape a little bit, right? Because then you've got, let's say Chris Taylor starting, you've got AJ Pollock on the bench. If Lux is starting, you've got AJ Pollock on the bench, you've got McKinstry on the bench, you've got Edwin Rios on the bench, who again hasn't been hitting it that well. Austin Barnes on the bench. All of a sudden, like the guys that are the first guy off the bench right now become the third, fourth, fifth guys off the bench. And again, I don't think you and I are looking at this saying Rios is a lost cause, like he needs to be replaced.
No.
Yeah. He's a guy that I think we're both, hey, he's going to be a productive guy. He just needs to take a deep breath and relax and catch his breath. So it's not like this is a total disaster of a group. It's just that what we thought was a deep group isn't the depth. I mean, even Matt Beatty, you and I, he's hit no 91. I'll have to admit, I would take a Matt Beatty at bat over some of the stuff that we've been seeing, because the thing with Beatty is like the ceiling is not very high, but it also felt like at least you knew like the moment wasn't going to be too big for him. Some of these guys come up and they just look horrified. I mean, Beatty never has looked as bad as Edwin Rios looked. Maybe I have a terrible memory, but he might not have much, but at least he looks competitive when he's up there. So all that said, I mean, I've been saying bring Keibert Ruiz and put him up on the bench. He's better than all these guys as a hitter.
And that also frees up Will Smith to pinch hit. You don't run into the problem of losing your backup catcher. So yeah,
if there's one thing I want to claim, it's the idea to bring Keibert Ruiz up simply so that Will Smith could be used as a pinch hitter. And I will double down on that and say, Keibert Ruiz is probably also immediately the second best bench hitter that you have. This is a guy who his hit tool is there. Now he's not going to hit for power, but he's going to give you competitive at bats. He's a switch hitter, by the way, which is something the Dodgers don't really have on the bench. So it's interesting. So, I mean, you kind of hinted at that. This is a question that we've been getting. Do you make a trade? I mean, if you were to make a trade, I'm not saying throw a name out there, but what kind of hitter are you looking for? Right-handed bat that, just sort of like a veteran type right-hander, like a Chase Utley, David Freese type, basically?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, if you could find another David Freese, maybe convince him to come out of retirement, I think he could still give you some quality at bats. But yeah, ideally you got you get a right-handed bat that could hit lefties, because we've seen, I mean, Darvish wasn't a lefty, but we've seen the Dodgers struggle with lefties again this season.
Yeah.
Ryan Weathers has pitched well against them twice. Marco Gonzalez and Justice Sheffield, two guys who aren't even, top lefties, both pitch well against them. So that's been kind of a theme with the Dodgers for years now. So that's something that probably will need to be addressed. I don't know if Sheldon Noisy is the answer
Yeah.
there. But yeah, they could definitely use a right-handed bat. Let me read this stat to you. I just saw on Twitter, though. Per ESPN stats and info, the Dodgers have 23 hits over their last 6 games, which is their fewest hits in a 6-game span since, guess when? Guess how many years ago it was?
I mean, I'm going to guess like pre all of our National League West titles. I'll guess 2011.
Okay, you're only off by about 100 years. September of 1909.
Wow. That's the last time they had that few hits in a 6-game stretch.
23 hits in 6 games. So that's less than 4 hits a game right there. Insane.
The Dodger teams that I've seen, I cannot believe that none of them. I mean, I feel like we would have killed for 4 hits a game some of those years.
Yeah,
Man.
yeah, we've seen some bad Dodger teams, and none of them have been this bad. So yeah, what we're seeing right now is historically bad stuff from the Dodgers offense. That's not going to continue.
Now, I mean, so one guy we have sort of loosely mentioned that I'd like to get your take on is AJ Pollock. Because part of me says, like if everybody's healthy, AJ Pollock in a way becomes the right-handed bat off of the bench. He's notoriously a master of lefties.
Right.
He was great last year, led the team in home runs last year. He's just been absolutely brutal. I mean, his last coming into tonight, 2 for his last 14 in the 6 or 7 games coming back. He obviously did hit a home run last night. 0 for 4 tonight, so 2 for his 18 going back. Pollock has been very up and down, but he's also he's not Edwin Rios in the sense that like the moment's too big for him, and there is part of me that thinks we're not positive that Edwin Rios is a highly productive, above average Major League Baseball player. Like we've seen enough to think it. AJ Pollock, we've seen it. He hit 16 home runs last year in 60 games. He's been like at higher levels than that, both with the Dodgers when healthy and previously with the Diamondbacks. So again, part of me thinks when everybody gets healthy, you have Chris Taylor starting in left, you have Gavin Lux starting at second base, McKinstry's on the bench, Pollock's on the bench. It kind of allows these guys to fall into roles that they're probably well suited for. AJ Pollock seems overqualified, and yet at the same time, he's been terrible this season. So anything you're seeing from Pollock that worries you greatly?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like with Pollock, he's just kind of a streaky hitter. So when he's struggling, he really struggles. And when he gets hot, he gets hot. We've seen him hit, multi-homer games. We've seen him rattle off, 3 and 4 games, stuff like that. So I think he just needs to get hot. Like you said, he's an established big league player. He's been doing this a long time. He knows that 162 games is a grind. Obviously, this start isn't what he had hoped for. No one wants to start off the season as bad as he has. But at some point, he's going to get hot. It's going to happen. Who knows when? It might be a while. It could happen tomorrow. Who knows?
Yeah.
But yeah, he's a guy that the Dodgers really need. You mentioned he typically mashes lefties. We haven't really seen that yet, but that's what they need at this moment. They need that right-handed bat. And I'm with you. I think Taylor has pretty much surpassed him as the starting left fielder. So when everyone's healthy, Pollock, becomes a bench type bat, which I think, like you said, he's very overqualified for that. So the bench starts looking a little better when everyone's healthy. But yeah, they definitely need him to get going. I mean, no one thinks of him as, a star on this team by any means. But when so many guys are out, he's one of the guys who needs to step up and do his part here. Especially when other guys like Seager and Turner and Mookie are struggling a little bit too. So, yeah, I hope he comes out of it sooner than later. Tomorrow's a good opportunity for him with a lefty and Snell on the mound. I'm not expecting too many other guys to be able to hit a lefty at this point. So hopefully, Pollock is the main guy. So we'll see. But yeah, he's really been struggling for sure.
It is interesting reading the comments. Jason Austin says at least AJ's at bats are competitive, and Part of me agrees
Mhm.
with that. Maybe I'm just comparing him to
Some of
some of
them.
these other guys where it's like, well, he looks better than Rios looked. He looks better than Barnes looked. Titan Man says, hey, he gets a pass. He was good for us last year. Aeronetic says, when AJ is not producing, he just looks shot. And that's where I kind of like, I don't know which I agree with. I feel like his at-bats are competitive, but I also very much resonate with the idea that when he is struggling, he looks about as
Yeah.
bad as some of these other people that we see. So that one's not good. And then Laura Lara makes the point. The Dodgers are still in first place. Like, this is why we don't
Yeah.
panic. This is the same
Yeah.
team that was 14-2 or whatever they started out the season at. Obviously, it's not great right now, but we are in the midst of a struggling moment. And obviously, because it's the Padres, I think it's magnified. Now, there's 2 more games. That's the hard part. It's like you
Yeah.
just had your off day. You've got Snell tomorrow. You've got Musgrove, who I think right now might be the best of all the Padres pitchers. Darvish maybe being the exception to that one at the
Yeah.
moment. So
I wish we got Chris Paddock in one of these
I
games.
know.
That if you were talking about how we could get out of his slump, facing him would have been the way. But unfortunately, like, yeah, we're not getting him.
I think Paddock was afraid to pitch against the Dodgers, knowing that you had a post game show one of these nights. He just didn't want to hear it from you.
Yeah, probably.
Well, I mean, this is I joked with you before. I was like, hey, we should start doing a player of the game segment, and then here we are, and it's like tonight of all nights is probably not the greatest night in the world to do a player of the game segment. Folks joining us, jokes allowed on this segment. All right, if you've got a joke submission for player of the game, we'll take it. I've got a couple names. I'll let you go first if you've got anybody that you want to include in your player of the game first.
Yeah, yeah. I actually got one guy I could think of, and I kind of mentioned him earlier, but I'm going Jimmy Nelson, player of the game. He pitched a scoreless inning. He had a couple breaking balls that look pretty nasty in there. He looks like he's kind of rounding into form a little bit. Got off to a rough start, which can be expected. He hadn't pitched in so long. It's a new role in the bullpen. But now I think he's had like 4 scoreless appearances in a row, something like that. The stuff looked really good tonight, and with who knows how long Kniebel's going to be out, that's
Yeah.
a high leverage guy you're potentially losing. So someone is going to have to step into that role, and it's looking like Nelson could be the guy. Very small sample, of course, but yeah, he's my player of the game tonight for pitching 1 scoreless inning.
Well, he's the first submission in the chat as well. THP Knob on YouTube agrees with you. Jimmy Foster says Kershaw. Justin Gomez wants to give Austin Barnes a shout out. I assume that falls under the joke
What?
category. BB says Tatis if we're going the other side. Brian Sevilla, Manny Buchado. Kershaw gets some love. Jimmy Nelson, another one as well. I like this one. Solon Style, Oral Hershiser asking if almond milk was dairy. That was a great moment. I don't know if you saw Andy McCullough posted the exchange and then commented below it with another video of, I believe it might have been Rex Hudler talking to somebody else, and Rex Hudler referred to the moon as a planet. And so it was about a 30-second dialogue about convincing Rex Hudler that the moon is actually not a planet. It's something different. So that was amazing. Mookie Betts is a good option, I think. Played some really good defense. Did have a couple good ones as well. Nobody mentioned either of the 2 names on my list, which tells you how good my list is, I think. My first choice is Luke Raley, just because I loved the bunt so much. I loved the bunt so much. It was successful. It was into the shift, so I give him. And then shout out to DJ Peters, Major League Baseball debut. Probably not necessarily how he dreamed it up, a 6-1 game, that the game is already over and 2 outs in the ninth. But
Didn't hang around long either. Swung
First
at the
pitch.
first pitch.
Made some decent contact, some hard contact there. We could check the Statcast on that one and see what DJ Peters had on his exit velocity there. But yeah, those were the guys. I mean, those were the guys that kind of jumped out to me. DJ Peters, 97 miles an hour. So there you go, 1 for 1 on hard hit baseballs for DJ Peters.
Not bad. Hopefully he's in the starting lineup tomorrow after that one. Huh?
Yeah, no kidding. Well, yeah, who knows? I mean, yeah, we could use him. Lefty, he is a lefty on the mound, so you never know. Probably gets Rayleigh's spot. He's probably out there somewhere. Maybe he's playing center field, Mookie in right, and Pollock in left. So we'll see. Let's see some comments. Yeah, I mean, if you've got questions or reactions that you want to throw out there, please do those now. Klaus on Facebook says we should have never let Alex Wood walk. He's on fire. I did see a text today that I think he gave up a hit to the first batter he faced and then had 7.
He gave up a home run in the first and then ended up going 7 innings, 1 hit.
Yeah.
So, and that was in his first outing. He went 5 shutout innings. So yeah, good for Alex Wood. Good start to the season. But we signed another pitcher named Trevor Bauer this offseason. So our rotation was kind of full. I don't know even if Alex Wood was here pitching that well right now, I don't know where he fits into this starting rotation.
Yeah. Guillermo Lopez, honest question. Can the Dodgers continue to struggle? So I'll rephrase it this way. Do the Dodgers break out of this slump tomorrow, Daniel, in your estimation?
I'm gonna say no, just because of,
Lefty?
at the at bats we saw tonight were not great. There's a lefty on the mound. The Dodgers have not hit lefties. It's a good lefty at that. Like, it's not just some mediocre lefty. It's a really good lefty. But I think with Blake Snell, you just got to hope maybe you could raise his pitch count early. He tends to be a little wild at times. I think he only went 5 innings last week against the Dodgers. So hopefully he could get his pitch count up and get him out of there early and get into the bullpen. I think that's the best plan against Blake Snell. But yeah, they're going to get out of it at some point. I just don't know if it's going to be this weekend, considering the pitchers that they're facing.
Yeah, and to be clear, it's not going to necessarily get any easier after the Padres series. I can't remember. Do they play the Reds? Maybe
the Reds.
The Reds.
Yeah.
So the Reds are a little bit of a reprieve. Then you get Milwaukee the following weekend. So it's not necessarily going to get easier. I'm with you. The left-hander is not great. The flip side of that is they are seeing Snell again. This is a guy that they just saw a few months ago as well. So if there's a pitcher they're most familiar with, it's probably Blake Snell. The flip side is they haven't hit him in any of those appearances. They did get to him as sort of pushing him out of the game early last time. At least with Bauer on the mound that it's going to be competitive. It's not to say we don't think they're going to win. But as I've been saying, the under, both these teams are under about 80% of the time this season. So tomorrow's probably another good under to take there. We had another good question in here. THP Knob asks, who takes Knebel's spot in the pen? Vesia was actually obviously the guy that got called up temporarily. He's a lefty, so I don't know if he's the first guy to take that spot. Clevenger is another option, although Vesia seems to be ahead of him as a left-hander. Do you have anybody that you would predict? Is Vesia the guy that you think would take Knebel's spot? Even if it's not serious, I imagine he's for sure going to be on the injured list for at least 10 days.
Yeah, I would assume he's headed to the IL. I'm not really sure who's been throwing well at the alternate site, so I can't really comment on that. The fact that they called up Vesia once already probably makes him, a good candidate. He didn't pitch when they called him up. He was only up for a game, I believe.
Yeah.
But yeah, he's probably, the main candidate. Joe Kelly is going to be back soon. I don't know how soon. I don't think, tomorrow. He's probably still a couple weeks away. He'll be back eventually, though. There's another arm you'll be adding. But yeah, I'm going to go with Vesia there. And even then, I'm not expecting him to pitch any leverage innings. Yeah. I would expect, the David Price, the Jimmy Nelsons, that they'll probably step into more leverage roles. And someone we haven't really talked about tonight is Dennis Santana, but I just wanted to mention that he's been pretty rough to start the year. Tonight was another night. We mentioned last week that even though he got out of that big jam against Tatis, his command was just kind of all over the place in that outing and his next outing, and then he was all over the place again tonight. And that's always been the biggest concern with Dennis Santana. It's not the stuff. It's never been the stuff. It's always been, does he know where the ball's going when he throws it? At the moment, he doesn't. So I don't know. Like I said, I don't know who's looked good at the alternate site, but that's potentially another guy you could think about optioning pretty soon here. I don't know if they have that luxury right now. They kind of need all the arms they could get at the moment. He's a guy who at the moment does not look like a big league pitcher.
Yeah, I mean, tonight, Santana, 12 balls and 11 strikes. So that tells you everything you need to hear. 2 hits, 2 walks, 2 earned runs in 1 inning pitched. As far as other options, just guys on the 40-man roster, obviously Clevenger and Vesia are the 2 left-handed options. If you want a righty, you've got Mitch White, Edwin Uceda, Andre Jackson, and Gerardo Carrillo are the right-handed options. Again, I'm with you. Vesia seems like the obvious choice just because they've already called him up once. I could go look. I don't know who they have on their taxi squad. That would seem to be the best indication. But I would guess it's Vesia even as a left-hander. And then, I'm with you. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised. Maybe a Mitch White or somebody like that comes and takes the spot away from Santana. Obviously, the bullpen is well rested. Vesia kind of got called up in a spot where they clearly just wanted an extra arm because they were taxed. So I don't know if they make a move on Santana immediately, but the flip side is he worked a lot tonight. So why not option him and bring somebody else up just in case? Get a look at that person. Santana's not going to be used for a couple nights as well. So that'll be interesting to watch, but I think both of us would lean Vesia. Laura Lar asks how many errors tonight. 2 is the number of errors. If you want to count Edwin Rios' catch or drop, I should say. That would have been number 3. I'm not sure the rule. I mean, if you drop, I imagine, like, were you surprised that wasn't an error?
I don't think that one hit his glove,
Okay.
so I think that's why it probably wasn't considered an error. So I think it's got to, especially on a foul ball like that, I think it's got to hit the glove to be considered an error. But with that said, just because it's not an error in the scorebook doesn't mean it wasn't a play that should have been made. Yeah, we even heard, I think it was the Padres dugout was kind of making a little fun of him after he kind of pulled up a little too early there, but. Um, yeah, the defense overall has not been good for the Dodgers, and we've seen in these Padres games how crucial defense is. Like we've seen, defensive plays win both teams games, and we've seen bad defense lose games for both teams. So yeah, defense is crucial, and right now the Dodgers are just not playing great defense, and that's on top of a historic team slump at the plate.
Yeah, absolutely. I was trying to find taxi squad because that was one question that we had been asked. I can't.
I don't think they need a taxi squad when they're at home. That's only when they go out on the road.
Okay.
So I don't know if they have like a set taxi squad at the moment.
Okay. Clevenger was on the taxi squad at one point earlier in the year, obviously with Santana, but again, Vesia got the call as well. So somebody asked, Klaus Miller asked, any word on Kelly or Catman, Tony Gonsolin? The answer is no. Obviously, Gonsolin's a shoulder injury, so I wouldn't expect to hear anything about Gonsolin for a while. They're going to be super careful there as well. Let's see. Guillermo's asking whether or not the Dodgers struggling would affect Trevor Bauer's decision to stick with the Dodgers. I mean, obviously he's very financially incentivized to stick around. And secondly, when we say the word struggle, let's remember the Dodgers have the best record in baseball right now. So
and it's April too. Like I do not think Trevor Bauer is regretting anything. You could look at the teams he's been on in recent years. None of them have been good. So it's not like even if the Dodgers are struggling and finish 500 this year, that's still an upgrade from what he was. But no, he's loving it here. I watch all his vlogs. For those who don't watch it, you get some really cool information from watching those things. You get clubhouse access. He talks to some of the guys. He's really smart when it comes to pitching. So if there's any young pitchers out there, he could help you with that type of stuff. But yeah, I don't think he's regretting his decision at all. And I think tomorrow's honestly the perfect game for him. Like we saw, the energy overall was really low for the Dodgers tonight. And I'd say even though they've been struggling lately, like the energy's for the most part has been pretty good. But tonight there was just no energy whatsoever. And I think having a high energy guy like Trevor Bauer going tomorrow could spark something. You never know. So hopefully he comes out and has a good outing tomorrow. And they could snap out of this.
Yeah, absolutely. Nothing really worried. Michael Nelson points out the Dodgers are missing probably 4 starting position players: Bellinger, Lux, McKinstry, and Taylor. Again, maybe McKinstry shouldn't qualify as a starter. 3 of those guys.
3.5.
Yeah, 3.5. McKinstry and Pollock kind of probably a half step below Taylor. So three starting offensive players, and if you're and probably 4 of your top 10 offensive guys are all out right now. So
and also when on a night like tonight when Austin Barnes is in the lineup, you're missing another one of your best hitters. So yeah.
Yeah, fair enough. No comment there from me. Let's see. I was going to go through some of the quotes from Clayton Kershaw, or excuse me, from Dave Roberts and anything like that. Kershaw did point out, he said, some of the stuff might have been just a product of them facing me just 6 days ago, as far as the Padres being early on the count. Although he wasn't necessarily surprised. You kind of hinted at this. Dave Roberts quotes on Corey Knebel: undergoing tests in the morning, the upper tricep in his arm. Quote, I don't know if it was a pull. He felt some uncomfortable sensation in his upper tricep. That's not great. That's not what you want to hear necessarily on a guy. But again, as you pointed out, there are worse parts of the body. Maybe not a lot of worse parts of the body, but the shoulder is better than the elbow. It might mean 9 months out instead of 12 months out, that kind of thing. So we'll definitely see how that plays out. Again, tomorrow, Trevor Bauer on the mound for the Dodgers, Blake Snell for the Padres. I guess we'll sign off with this, Daniel. Predictions for tomorrow, predictions for Sunday. So they got 2 left. Obviously, you've got Dustin May and Musgrove. I kind of hinted, I said if there were 2 games, the Dodgers were going to be at a disadvantage. I predicted tonight's game and Sunday's game would be the two, just from a pitching perspective. Nothing against Clayton Kershaw. That just tells you, Clayton Kershaw might be a top 10 pitcher in baseball. Yu Darvish might be top 5. So tomorrow, I actually I like the Dodgers. I think they have a big advantage. So obviously, offensively, the Dodgers are struggling. Guys like Tatis are hitting their stride. Tommy Pham gets a hit. He's been terrible. That's kind of worrisome to me. So looking ahead to tomorrow, prediction from you: Dodgers versus Padres, Bauer versus Snell.
Yeah. I mean, I'm never going to pick the Dodgers to lose, even as bad as they've looked. So I'm going to go, I think they're going to win a close, low-scoring game tomorrow. I think Bauer's going to pitch well. I think maybe they, a big hit late, gives them like a 3-2 win. And then Sunday, that's the first game I'm going to at Dodger Stadium since 2019. So I'm predicting I'm going to be the good luck charm. Sunday is going to be the day the Dodgers break out, have a big offensive day, maybe 8 runs, win that game 8-4. So yeah, I think they could still salvage this series, come out with a split, which all things considered, it would be amazing.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think tomorrow's going to be another rough one offensively, and then they break out Sunday.
Okay, Jason Austin's got 3-2 Dodgers. That's kind of the area that I'm sitting in, maybe 4-1. I'm going to go 4-1 Dodgers. I think they can get to Snell a little bit. I don't think he worries them. Obviously, I was hoping we'd be able to wear out the pen. That has not happened. Although, Pomeranz pitched today. Melanson has already pitched. So maybe at the back end of the pen, we've gotten a little bit of that. But I've got 4-1 Dodgers tomorrow. I think Sunday's going to be a higher scoring affair like you do. I think Dustin May is good, but he's definitely not at the level of the first 3 guys we've seen. I think Musgrove is the best pitcher that the Padres have going right now. So I don't necessarily love that for the Dodgers. I think they need to win tomorrow because I think they're going to be at a disadvantage. It'll be interesting to see. I mean, just when we're talking about lines, if the Dodgers lose tomorrow, let's say they continue to fail to hit, I'll be so fascinated to see what the line is on Sunday if the Dodgers would actually be underdogs.
I don't know if you saw that crazy stat that they've been favored in, like, I don't even know how many games it was. It was like 90 straight games or something like that, which is just absurd. Like the last time they weren't favored was in the NLDS 2019 against the Washington Nationals.
Well, I was wondering as we were looking at that, because last weekend in San Diego, the Dodgers were heavy favorites. I mean, it was like minus 150, minus 160. And so I'm like, if the Dodgers are going to be minus 160 in San Diego, what team in baseball are they going to be underdogs to? Now, and that was with the Padres' best rotation going. Obviously, the Dodgers had their best. The Padres have been struggling. So maybe that's part of it. The lines have started to creep down a little bit. I think it was Dodgers minus 150 today. So I'll be very curious to see. I don't think tomorrow they'll be underdogs, but Sunday I think would be maybe the best chance all season that the Dodgers would be to be close to even money. So something to watch there. Aronetics got 2-0 Dodgers tomorrow. BB's got 1-0. Michael Nelson 5-1 Dodgers. DJ Peters hits one out of California. So hopefully that's true. Hopefully we get DJ.
Hey, he's got the power to do it.
He's got the power to do it. And again, both of us, I would expect. I'm not even going to be surprised. I will expect him to start tomorrow, just because.
Yeah.
I can't see them starting Rayleigh over him with a lefty on the mound. And so it'll be a good chance for him. He definitely didn't look scared. He didn't look overmatched. He looked more competitive than some of the other guys they threw up there. And that was his first major league at bat. So good for him. We'll see it there. So Daniel and I both predicting the Dodgers to win tomorrow. Sunday, Daniel predicting a Dodgers win with himself in attendance. I've kind of said no comment on a prediction for Sunday. I think the Reds, we get some things back on track with the Reds there. So, hey, we appreciate you guys joining us. I want to give a couple shout outs. First of all, to FOCO, F-O-C-O. If you haven't checked out their stuff, they've got some awesome Dodger bobbleheads and stuff that they've got. I've got a Cody Bellinger bobblehead. I always forget which side it is. Cody Bellinger bobblehead up behind me that they gave me, so shout out to them. And also make sure to check out, today we posted an interview. I sat down with Britt Giroli of The Athletic. It was awesome. She posted an article this week on the best starting rotations in baseball. Big surprise, Dodgers #1. I kind of followed up with her and said, is this one of the best rotations of all time? What she thinks makes this group special. Is it the 1 through 3, or is it the depth the Dodgers have with 4, 5, and 6? So she's awesome. If you don't follow her, Britt _Giroli, and check out that interview on the Dodger Blue 1958 YouTube channel. We appreciate you guys for joining us. We had a good crowd tonight. I wasn't sure. I told Daniel, I said, the last one we did was at 12:30, and this one was after the biggest dud of the season. So we're grateful for everybody that showed up. We're going to be back next week. I believe maybe on Thursday is game 1 of the series against the Brewers. We got to figure that out with NFL drafts going on, that kind of thing. So we'll just make sure we've got a good time for everybody. But we appreciate it. Make sure you're subscribed here, Dodger Blue 1958. Ring the notification bell. Dodger Blue 1958 everywhere on social media. That's Daniel Starkand at @DStarkand on Twitter. I'm Jeff Spiegel at Jeff Spiegel on Twitter. We appreciate it. And here are the wise words of Vince Scully to end our night on a good note.
The best team holding a trophy high in the air. The Los Angeles Dodgers, champions of the baseball world.